Hello everyone, happy Friday the 13th and welcome back to the Evolution of Horror. My name is Mike Munzer, as ever I am your host, and usually in this podcast we explore and dissect the history and the evolution of the horror genre one season at a time. We are currently in the middle of our home invasion season, but we're taking a little break this week. That's partly because October is a very, very busy month, and currently, if you're listening to this on the day it drops, we're in the middle of our Evolution of Horror screening tour. I am somewhere in the north of England right now having a brilliant time screening amazing classic horror movies to podcast listeners, so we've not had time to produce a new episode of the home invasion season. However, it is also, I realised, Friday the 13th, so I thought what better time to dip into the Patreon back catalogue and release an episode on the main feed that we recorded 3 years ago exclusively for Patreon. So 3 years ago I got together with my dream warriors Stevie Webb and Becky Dark, and we discussed two movies from the Friday the 13th franchise. We got patrons to vote for which two Friday the 13th movies they wanted to hear us discuss, and they voted for Friday the 13th Part 2 from 1981 and Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, from 1984. So those are the movies we discussed, and that's what you're about to hear now. So obviously some of our reference points might be a little dated. This is an episode that's 3 years old. It was recorded in the midst of the pandemic, but I think it was a really, really fun discussion. So please enjoy our spoilerific discussion of Friday the 13th Part 2 and Friday the 13th Part 4.
I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason. His body was never recovered from the lake after he drowned. And if you listen to the old-timers in town, they'll tell you he's still out there.
Camp Crystal Lake is jinxed. It's got a death curse.
Some folks claim they've even seen him. Right in this area.
Who's that? Oh, hi. What are you doing on this mess?
The girl who survived that night at Camp Blood, that Friday the 13th, she claims she saw him.
The boy. Is he dead too?
We didn't find any boy.
Then he's still there.
Becky Dark, hello.
Hi, pal. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm okay, thanks.
Yeah, good. And Stevie Webb, hello.
Hello.
It's been so long.
I know. I've crawled out from under my rock.
Stevie!
We've missed you so much, Stevie. How's this insane year been for you?
I've tried to enjoy it as much as possible. And being an actor, you know, all you do is complain you don't have a job, and then when you have a job, all you do is complain that you haven't got any time off. And so I've tried to, because I mean, I never asked for this much time off, but I've tried to embrace it as much as possible. And yeah, just trying to keep spirits high. A lot of horror, you know. So yeah,
It's important.
Yeah, been doing what I can to keep chirpy.
Well, that's good. You know, watching Friday the 13th movies always help, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's been quite a couple of weeks. It's within 2 weeks. It's Halloween, bonfire night, the election, second lockdown, Friday the 13th, and my birthday. So it's been a good fortnight for me.
I mean, in this last week alone, we've had, you know, Donald Trump being elected out, and then apparently there's a vaccine coming. So, you know, maybe November's just here to come and say, fuck you, 2020.
Yeah,
you know?
It's come through November.
Yeah,
come through.
So far. And we've got, like you said, a Friday the 13th and a Halloween within 2 weeks of each other. I mean, I could only count that as a good omen, surely.
Yeah, that's a gift.
Exactly. Let me ask you, so we're going to talk about parts 2 and 4, as voted for by people that listen to this, because 2 and 4, I think, they're some of the more popular sequels.
Great choices.
Good choices, indeed. Let me ask you both. Let's quickly touch upon the original before we get into the sequel itself. Stevie, I'm gathering you're a fan, right, of the Friday the 13th franchise as a whole?
Yeah, I really am. It's I was always, when I was younger, it was always I was more of a Freddy fan. And I don't really know why, but I think what I love about the Fridays and why I visit them more as an adult is because they're senseless.
Yes.
And you know, and you don't. There's no arc. There's no storyline. it's kind of just pointless killing, and so it's much easier watch. So I have been known to pop on Jason Takes Manhattan while I'm making my breakfast.
Oh yeah. Becky, what about you? Are you a fan of the original Friday the 13th?
Yeah, yes. I love these films so much. So as you know, I came to, the big three quite late in life. It's all a bit, it's new ground for me relatively in terms of, the number of years that I've been on the planet and how many of those years I've been watching horror films. And Friday the 13th is my top for me. Like Jason, I just want to give Jason cuddles for one thing. Like, I feel so sorry for him. He has such a shit time. He's absolutely the most endearing of the serial killers for me. There's always loads of tits and
Yeah,
just like you say, like zero story. Like I love it. They all have ridiculous outfits. Like no one wears a pair of jeans that hasn't been cut in some way. No one can wear a t-shirt that hasn't had either the sleeves or the entire bottom of it, or both, just like cut off. It's
absolutely.
Even before Jason starts slashing people with machetes, like it looks like they've been attacked with scissors. It's amazing.
Well, I don't think we should forget that Jason is pretty fashion forward, if I'm honest. I mean, with his, in number 2, especially with his flannel and stuff like that, I really like that. He moves with the times, And even though these, these films technically are sort of days and hours apart, he manages to whip up a new outfit each time and
I've got so much to say about that in a bit, but yeah, it's true. They are so much fun, and what I kind of love and almost respect about them is how they are just made for the purpose of, like, we're just giving you a body count and that's basically it, right? I mean,
it doesn't ask you for anything, which is great.
And compared to, like, Becky, you said sort of the big 3 franchises, I think that Halloween was made sort of by this director who wanted to make something frightening and artistic and interesting. And obviously the same with Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street, right? And I think the funny thing about Friday the 13th is that it was so clearly made in such a cynical kind of let's make something cheap that can make us money. Like Sean Cunningham, who was a producer, right, before he was a director, like he worked with Wes Craven on Last House on the Left. And Wes Craven was the writer and director, and he was making this film that was all like, it's a response to the Vietnam War and America, and Sean Cunningham was like, he was the one that came up with the tagline, it's only a movie, and he's the guy that can like sell films, I think. And he came up with the idea for Friday the 13th just because Halloween did really well, and so he was like, let's pick another date in the calendar and basically like say it's going to be a movie, right? And he kind of came up with a tagline and a movie title before he wrote the film or came up with what it was going to be, and already he was getting funding for it. So I think like they're pretty clear from the off, aren't they, that this franchise is pretty much like, we are just going to churn them out, make them cheap and get loads of money for them.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you don't come to the Friday the 13th films for anything cerebral, or for them to be making like big political statements or talking about the zeitgeist or anything. It's just, like we've said, like they're money spinners, but they do it well, and the kind of cynicism behind it and the fact that it is all about the kills, all about the kind of sexy, teens going about their business in whatever camp they have somehow managed to kind of retrofit into this odd random like loose plot that they're going to set this one in. Like, I just love all that. It's so shallow and I love it.
Do you either of you ever find any of them scary at any point? Like, Stevie, are you ever sort of frightened by the Friday the 13th films?
I don't think so, because me being scared is a weird thing because it's something I enjoy so much. So I can't tell if I am scared or if I'm excited or if that's the same thing.
Yeah.
I know I feel something when someone's head comes off, but I don't know quite how to pinpoint what that emotion is.
Horny. That feeling is horny, Stevie.
Maybe it's that. Maybe I've got,
What is this feeling inside of me? Becky, what about you? Have you ever been scared by a Friday the 13th film?
They make me jump a little bit.
Yeah.
They've got a couple of decent jump scares. Like both of these, I've seen them before and I was watching them last night. I gave a little, jump, a couple of points.
Yeah.
But in terms of like scares, I never finish a Friday the 13th film kind of clutching my blanket up to my face like, oh, Jason's going to get me. What I kind of hope is that Jason's going to turn up so I can like give him a pep talk and a bit of a cuddle.
Exactly.
This started that whole craze of these camp killers. These films.
In every sense of the word camp there as well.
Well, camp, yeah, absolutely. Because, of course, obviously it was inspired by Halloween. And as you said, Sean Cunningham put out adverts before he even had a script or an idea what happens in it just to get the money. But, yeah, it started this craze where the audience is behind the killer. And each installment, you want gorier, more blood, harder. You want him to be less forgiving each time. And so it's a strange thing because obviously the jump scares do get you, but at the same time you're not worried for the characters. You want to see their demise.
Yeah, cheering at the kills.
Oh god, yeah. This is probably the franchise most responsible for that, right? For that kind of, you really tune in to watch the killer, you don't really give a shit about the kids. Because we three have talked quite a lot about the Nightmare on Elm Street films, right? And when it's at its best, you kind of care about Nancy, you care about the Dream Warriors, you care, like, there's something, you're a little bit more emotionally invested, but I don't think they give a shit about audiences being emotionally invested in this lot, right?
And I think for me, like with Freddy, for example, even though it went so like off the boil and he became such a kind of weird household kind of caricature of what he was originally, and all of the, I don't know, lunchboxes and hotlines and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I never now watch a Nightmare on Elm Street film, and even if I am enjoying the kills, even if I find myself like rooting for Freddy at all, like I feel kind of bad about it because he's gross, right? We know that he's genuinely a bad man. We know that he he enjoys it, and he is like a gross kind of child abuser and all that kind of stuff. With Jason, it's just like this poor kid. It's not his fault, and I will die on this hill.
Yeah.
He had a rough
start. I mean, even Stevie, do you remember Freddy versus Jason, which is terrible in a lot of ways? But even in that, right, they sort of make Freddy the villain and Jason a little bit more sympathetic, right, in that kind of versus battle.
Absolutely, yeah, because he gets controlled by Freddy,
Yeah.
because he's a pawn, and Freddy uses him to wreak havoc on these kids for him, and yeah, so you do feel sorry for Jason that he's being used, and I mean, we'll go into the sort of timeline and what the hell happened to Jason. Where's he been? How's he got to this point? What was he doing before that? Whether he is this disabled boy who grew up in the woods feral, you don't know. So there's much more of a, he didn't do terrible. He doesn't know he's doing wrong, I don't think.
Exactly. It can't be helped. So Friday the 13th Part 1, obviously, famously, has no Jason apart from the very, very end. The story is all about Jason, though, right? He was this little boy who drowned because camp counselors were having sex. They weren't paying attention. They let this little boy drown. Then his mum, poor Pamela Voorhees, decided she was never going to let them reopen that camp ever again, and sort of went on a killing spree when they tried to reopen it. She killed a bunch of kids. The only survivor, Alice, managed to cut off her head. And then at the very end of Friday the 13th Part 1, this little boy, Jason, pops out from the lake, and that's where it ends, right? So that's kind of... And it kind of felt like a bit of a sort of end sting or a joke or a dream or something.
Yeah, like a Carrie moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much a Carrie moment, isn't it? So then let's begin then talking about Friday the 13th Part 2. Stevie, this is going to surely be the easiest plot synopsis you've ever done, but can I ask you briefly to tell us what the story is of Friday the 13th Part 2?
Yeah, sure. What I'll do is I'll say exactly the same thing for each film, but just change the names. I think that, or I'll just record a list of names and then you just edit it in. And I'll do it
exactly.
So yeah, directed by Steve Miner, of course. So when we start, we open and it's 2 months after the original film ending, and we're with Alice, and she's obviously had a rough time. She's been getting over this horrible thing that's happened, and she finds Pamela Voorhees' head in her fridge, and then suddenly Jason's there, and he finishes what he started. So he's somehow tracked her down. So that was 2 months after the original film. Then we jump 5 years. later where a new bunch of kids led by a character called Paul Holt, he wants to set up a new camp which is near the grounds of the original Crystal Lake, the dilapidated unused grounds, and his assistant Ginny. And so basically it's a bunch of camp counselors who are setting up a new camp, getting it ready, and want to open it. And but we hear of the legend straight away of Jason, that perhaps he, this boy from the lake, that he's still here. Sometimes people still think they see him and this is his territory. And of course, this turns out to be true. And one by one, the kids get killed.
Yeah, that's the gist. So, Becky, first of all, let me ask you, what do you think of part 2? How does it compare to part 1 for you?
I really like it. And weirdly, I have... my opinion of it has grown. So when I first saw it, I think I didn't get that all of them were going to be exactly the same. and so when I saw the second one and was like, well, this is exactly the same as the first one, I saw that as a bad thing. Whereas now that I've seen most of them, I realise, they're all exactly the same. And this is an excellent example of that format. So initially, not a fan. Now, big fan.
Yeah, I would agree with that. For me, it's in the whole spectrum of all 10, 11 Friday the 13th films, I'd say it's a middling one for me.
Okay.
I don't like it as much as 4, which we'll talk about in a bit, but I like it maybe more than 3 and some of the others.
I mean, it's no Jason Takes Manhattan.
It's no Jason Takes Manhattan, is it? Stevie, what about you? Where does Friday the 13th Part 2 sort of rank generally for you?
It was always a forgotten one for me, I think, because this was the start of Jason and what we come to know to be Jason. So it was kind of a forgotten one. But rewatching it this time, it's one that I haven't seen that many times. It's definitely my favourite Jason get-up with the sack over his head and that sort of thing. But as a film, I didn't find it this time that exciting. I think that's purely because of what we then know is to follow. I think watching it with the eyes of knowing what Jason becomes. But then I think it's fine personally. But it's just I wasn't as fond of it this time around.
I think the thing that I realised when watching it again this time, that it maybe wasn't as gory as I wanted it to be. And I think there was some censorship problems with this one. I think there were with all of them, actually. But this one, a lot of it is cut. And I kind of feel like if you're not going to get gore in Friday the 13th films, then what the hell are you watching it for? And there are some really cool bits, which we'll talk about, like the guy in the wheelchair who gets put, and the I've written here on my notes, the sex kebab, like the two people having sex in the bed. There's some really cool stuff, but actually if you compare it to part 1 or even part 4, where you actually really see that Tom Savini like knives going through torsos and skulls and stuff, it feels like actually with the second one it cuts away a lot. Like you see somebody scream and then it just cuts to the next scene or whatever. So
I think that had a lot to do with it, because they asked Tom Savini to come back, but he chose to do The Burning instead, which ironically is a rip-off of Friday the 13th. So it's quite strange.
And actually
I think that has a lot to do with it.
The Burning has one of the best kill sequences in that whole early 80s slasher.
On the boat.
The boat, the raft with the shears.
With
good.
the shears. Oh my gosh, it's absolutely fun. So I don't blame him for doing that. And also I think it suffers from the fact that they absolutely, like a lot of these franchises, did not plan to have a sequel and didn't know where they're going to take it. So it's a little bit tenuous, and there's a lot of questions, so they don't want to make any bold statements. They want to keep it quite ambiguous, I think. And they started filming it 4 months after the first one was released. So that was like, get it out. Paramount wanted a sequel now. I
think, and not only was it sort of a bit confusing about the mythology, I think some people were actually quite angered by it. Like I was watching the Crystal Lake Memories documentary, and there were people involved with the first one, including Tom Savini, that was like, Jason was dead. That was the whole point. That is literally the only reason anything happens in part 1. It like part 2 negates everything that happened. Like it negates Pamela Voorhees' whole reason for being and whole reason for killing people in the first one, right? again, I suppose it's best not to think about it too much, but does that affect does that ruin anything for you, Becky, about the first one? The fact that, like, the whole reason for Mrs. Voorhees killing people is like, oh no, actually her kid was apparently alive and just in the woods this whole time.
No, not really. People make mistakes.
It was miscommunication, if anything, wasn't it?
I mean, if anything, you know. And also, like, it's at the end of the first one that you kind of think, well, maybe he's not dead anyway. So it doesn't bother me that he's the killer in the second one. It's more...
I know what you're going to say.
It's just a lot of scary legs and walking. And it's like... So the first one is a bit more of a whodunit, right? Because you get all that, like, oh, what are you doing here? And it's all kind of behind the camera and you don't know it's her until right at the end. And with this... like, sure, we know now that it's Jason and it's Sackhead Jason and all of that. But at the time, you know, with it being sort of the legend of Jason and the fact that he was literally like a 8-year-old boy in a lake 5 years and 2 months ago. No, 2 months ago, because when he kills Alice, he's a full-grown man. But it's just,
that's right.
You just get that whole thing of, like, it's just lots of shots of, like, knee-down walking.
Like some sort of Jaws on land, basically. It's just like legs.
Whose legs are these? Just lots of walking and strings, like scary strings. So it's like, oh, well, I'm supposed to be scared of the legs. I can tell that, because the score is telling me that I should be. But it's not until so far into the film that you even see Jason, like, run across the road really briefly.
Oh, yeah.
And then you, like, see the shack. And then, you know, for the last sort of 15 minutes, it's full, like, Jason killing. But for so much of it, it's like... But the ambiguity doesn't really work as well in this one as it did in the first.
I think you're right. I think it doesn't quite know what it is. It's partly the original POV Giallo style that the first one is, and then it's sort of Halloween stalker, serial killer man, and it doesn't quite land in either. I think you're right. So that is why it kind of falls flat when it's that you see just the legs walking around and stuff and the strings.
Yeah, because like we talked about, the look of Jason in this one is one of the more creepy looks that Jason has. That sack that he wears, I would rather have seen him from the start in a way, because I think Jason himself is quite scary looking in this. But it's a long time, isn't it, before we get that reveal of what Jason actually looks like in this one. It takes its time.
And the sack is totally ripped off from The Town That Dreaded Sundown, 1973. I mean, it's exactly the same, except for one eye hole. Oh, can I just ask then? So, obviously, his face is somewhat deformed, and one eye is lower than the other. So, is he blind in that eye? Or did he just choose to cut one eye hole in the sack to just as an extra added challenge for himself?
Interesting. I hadn't thought about it. I would assume... I don't think he's going to be that good at fashioning himself something, a mask. So maybe he just did what he could.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I was just wondering.
So I was thinking about, like, how do I structure a chat about these films that are essentially nothing but body counts? So what I thought I would do is... I'm going to play a little game with you guys, and Stevie, you might already know this, you might have it written down, but I'm going to ask you both to take a stab at how many kills you think there are in this film, okay? I want to take a number from each of you.
Oh, I didn't do a kill count, so actually I haven't got it written down.
Okay, so we're going to do kill count guess, and then we'll go through them one by one, and I'll take us through them and number them, and we'll see if anyone reigns as a winner at the end, okay? So, Becky, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to guess a number. How many kills do you think there are in Friday the 13th, Part 2?
Okay, hold on. I'm doing a quick count. One sec. I watched 2 and 4 yesterday, so I'm trying to distinguish the two.
Between the characters.
Good luck.
Was it the blonde in the hot pants or the brown-haired one in the hot pants? That's tricky.
Shit, yeah. All right, I'm going to go 8.
Okay, Becky's going 8. I'm going to write that down. Stevie, what are you going for?
Oh, okay. And we're counting Alice at the beginning.
Yes. We are gonna. I'm gonna say this now. We won't count Jason as a kill because I don't even think you really see him die at the end. Right.
I'm gonna go number 10. I'm gonna go for 10.
Okay. Oh, interesting. So Becky's gone 8. Stevie's gone 10. All right. I'm gonna whiz through them, and we'll sort of talk about various bits and pieces as we go via the kills. Okay. Let's start with this opening kill then, which is of course Alice, the final girl from part 1. How did you find the scene in general, and also the fact that they just mercilessly killed off the final girl? Because again, this isn't really something that they did with Laurie in Halloween. This isn't something they did with Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street, but just offing our main character in the opening scene like this. Stevie, what did you think of that decision?
Well, I know a little bit of a behind the scenes about this, about what happened there. So Adrienne King, there's one story that apparently the reason she's only in the opening scene is because she had a terrible, scary stalker from the first film, so wanted to be in it as little as possible. And then that was discredited by the studio, and they said no, her agent wanted way too much money, and we couldn't afford to have her. So, like, her day fee was ridiculous. But then she is on camera, on record, saying that she wasn't told that she died in the first scene, and so she just signed up to be back in the film, and she filmed it all in. She turned up and filmed it all in one day, and they didn't send her a script or anything, and she just basically improvised most of the speech in it. And then she said just to for the cherry on top, she had the most horrible time because the stunt coordinator guy wasn't very good or experienced, and the ice pick they first used didn't retract and just like went into her forehead.
Oh no!
So
because that's right in the temple as well. That is gonna.
Yeah, right in the temple.
Christ.
Yeah, so she had a terrible time. They're the reasons, but I would have loved. Which is maybe why I like some of I call it the second trilogy when we've got the Tommy Jarvis trilogy. I love a through character, especially in these mindless slashes, just so you've got something to hold on to and a semblance of a through storyline. So, I mean, it's cool because it's unexpected, but I would have liked to have seen her carry on.
Yeah, what did you think, Becky, of this opening scene, this stalking scene and Alice's death?
Couldn't care less. See her off.
Couldn't give a fuck, mate.
No. Who? No, I mean, I love a through character. I do. But I didn't have enough emotional attachment to Alice from the first one that I was particularly devoed when she got an ice pick to the temple. That is a horrible story about the actress, though, to be honest.
Yeah, she didn't have a great time.
But yeah, I don't know, it kind of... It's just really confusing. Please, can we talk about how he's a grown man? Please.
Yeah. So they make a real point to say, because it could have been ambiguous as to when this scene happened, right? It could have been years later, but they make a real point of saying it happens 3 months after part 1. Mm-hmm. So they have really dug this hole for themselves because they know how their first film ended, and they're saying 3 months later, and we have this what looks like a fully grown man, right, killing Alice.
By his legs.
Yeah.
Well, and no. I mean, it's not just a teenager after a growth spurt. It is a honking man.
Do you have in your brain a kind of mythology of what's really going on here? I mean, my only thought is that was the final scene of Friday the 13th just a dream, basically? Like, was that not real? That could be a way out of it, right? I
think that's what you've got. I think if you want to actually try and make sense of it... which can be fun, can be quite fun, because you got to do that.
In theory, what makes less sense is the final scene of Friday the 13th, because if you look at the timeline, because I actually looked up the timeline here we go. So in 1946 Jason was born. He's fucking old, Jason. Boys. 1946 he was born. In 1957, when he was 11 years old, he drowned at Camp Crystal Lake. 1958, Pamela kills the 2 camp counselors who let him drown.
Yeah.
Then Camp Crystal Lake is shut down. And then 20 years on, Friday the 13th of June, 1979, is when they reopen the camp. And Pamela goes on her killing spree from it that happens in part 1. So...
Then he's always a man.
Really? It should have been a man bursting out of the lake at the end of part 1.
At that point, he would already be, a honking man.
Yeah.
He's born in 46.
He's born in 40. So he's 20. He's what? 20, 30? He's mid-30s by part 2.
Okay, fine. All right. In that case, the lake was a dream. Okay.
It has to be. And also, they do that in various of the films in the franchise. They have this dream sequence at the end.
And also, it's true. And also, what I love then is that, so Friday the 13th Part 1 came out in 1980, and then Friday the 13th Part 2 came out a year later, and it's set after this opening scene 5 years on from Part 1. So the majority of this film is set 5 years in the future, right? So most of Friday the 13th Part 2 is set in 1984. Okay. And then Part 3 and 4 are set across the same weekend. So Part 2 is set on Friday the 13th, 1984. Part 3 is set on Saturday the 14th, 1984. And Sunday the 15th. Part 4, the final chapter, which we'll get to, is set on Monday the 16th until Tommy Jarvis finally kills Jason on Tuesday the 17th. Then, just to quickly whiz through it, Part 5 is set 5 years after Part 4, even though it's only released a year later. So Part 5 is set in 1989. Part 6 is set in 1990. Part 7 is set in 1997, even though the film only came out in 1987. So they're 10 years in the future by this point. Jason Goes to Hell is set in 2003, even though it only was released in 1993. So they're still that sort of decade apart. Freddy vs. Jason is also set in 2003, so even though they were made over a decade apart, Freddy vs. Jason is set a month after Jason Goes to Hell, apparently, according to Friday the 13th Wiki.
What the fuck?
In 2010, Jason is captured and cryogenically frozen, and then Friday the 13th of August 2455 is when he goes on his killing spree in Jason X. So technically, in theory, we can never have another Friday the 13th film that is set now, because he's frozen now. He has been since 2010, and he will be until 2455. So it's an amazing timeline.
That's actually brilliant. That is one of the most enjoyable things that's happened to me in lockdown, hearing that timeline.
That was incredible. That was a thing of beauty.
It's all there. It's all there on the Friday the 13th Wiki. It's really wonderful. I love it. So Alice is offed, and then we cut to a few years later, and we're back to the usual Friday the 13th setup, right? So they're about to reopen the camp, and we meet this whole bunch of new characters. Like you mentioned in your synopsis, we've got Ginny and Paul and these other characters. Just quickly, let me ask you, what do you think of this group of characters? Do you guys have anything to say about them? Any comment whatsoever? Any fave characters? Any least faves? Becky?
Go on.
I have two really important things to say about Ginny.
Yeah.
Firstly, she's a child psychology major, which comes in very important later. And secondly, she's on her period, which means she can't have sex with Paul, which means she can survive the film. So the whole reason that Ginny is the final girl of Friday the 13th Part 2 is because she's on the rag. And I find it hilarious that neither of you two realise this, and this is why you get women on the podcast.
I need more information, though.
Okay, so when they're all sat around the campfire, no, not the campfire, when they're having the briefing, when Paul is giving them the briefing right at the beginning, and he's talking about health and safety and all that stuff, he talks about bears. And he says like, don't have food fights, no perfume for the girls, and stay clean if you're menstruating, right? And then,
how have I never noticed that line in my whole life?
Because you're a boy.
I switch off during any scenes of dialogue in this film.
And then, when they go back to the cabin later, Paul and Ginny, who are having this slightly secretive on-off sex thing, they go back and they're snogging, and she says, "There's something I have to tell you." And she doesn't actually say it, but then she wakes up in bed the next day on her own, and he has written on the mirror, beware of the bears.
Oh my God.
She's on her period.
Yes.
She's on her period. They couldn't have sex. That's why she's the final girl.
Oh my God. You're absolute. That makes absolute sense.
God.
You're right. Beware, and he puts on her mirror, beware of the bears, because she's on.
That's blown my mind more than the timeline has. That's incredible.
I don't think I've ever, in all the podcasts, all the documentaries, ever seen anyone pick up on that, ever.
There you go. Mic drop. I'm off now. So
yeah, thanks
you
for
guys
tuning
enjoy.
in.
Honestly.
Yeah, no worries. See you later.
Absolutely incredible. I love that. Ginny is like, I've spoken to a lot of people who say that Ginny is one of their favourite Friday the 13th final girls. Stevie, what's your opinion on that? Are you a Ginny fan?
I am. I am. I mean, they go out of their way to make sure that she stands out as different to the, quote unquote, other girls who are just sexually charged and maybe not that intelligent, you know, the way they do it. So they go out of their way of like making sure that you see a scene where she's beating a boy at chess and goes, checkmate, you know, and then just before the briefing, she's got a chainsaw and she's just cutting through a piece of wood. We never, for no reason whatsoever, we never know why. We never see them with doing any other labour or building really particularly. So they set up that she's this, you know, she's going to be the final girl and she's different to the others and she's got a heart because, you know, when they're at the bar as well, she's concerned about Jason. She's thinking that poor kid.
Because she's a child psychologist.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Why.
Yeah, exactly. And so she has all that compassion and concern. And so I like that. I like that they give us that. But I also, what I really like about her is she doesn't turn around and go, try this, sucker, you know, and do something like that with that corny sort of final girl.
Yeah.
She's very real, I think. I mean, as real as you can be in a Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah, and she bests the monster at the end using her child psychology powers, right, Becky? That felt like something that was almost very Dream Warriors to me.
Yeah, definitely. And they set it up because sort of quite subtly, it all starts to go a little bit dreamy beforehand. So the score starts to go a little more wobbly, and it starts. Oh, it's like Jason maybe is he sort of phasing in and out now? Like he seems to, this could be a bit dreamy. And then obviously the next, she's donned the jumper and she's talking to him in Pamela's voice and sort of saying, you know, mummy says this and etc.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was set up quite well. It's clever. She's good. And then at the end, like in terms of her being real, she like when Paul has to kind of carry her back, like she's genuinely freaked out. You don't get any of those sort of cool one-liners or now all of a sudden she knows kung fu. Like she's just about gotten herself out of this life or death situation and seems like genuinely traumatized by it, which I'm a fan.
Before all of the killing of the kids starts happening, we have another kill, the second kill of the film. Does anyone remember what the second kill of the film is? Stevie, do you want to have a stab, have a guess at who it might be? It happens in the daytime, I believe.
Does it?
Before, like, the proper carnage begins.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so annoying. It's not Hitchhiker Girl, that's number 4, isn't it?
Yeah, that's number 4, Hitchhiker with Banana.
Yes, yeah.
We'll get to her. That's
AKA my absolute fave.
Yeah, Banana Girl.
Is it Harbinger Man?
It's Crazy Ralph.
Oh yeah, the guy on the
barbed
road.
wire. The barbed wire.
Yes, it is. So this is
against the tree.
This is Harbinger Man, exactly, perfectly put, Becky. The guy who he was in the first one, right? Who was like, "You're all doomed. It's cursed," and everything.
Yeah.
Mordecai.
Yeah, exactly. Pops up and gets offed pretty quick. What did you think of Crazy Ralph, Stevie, as a character in general? He's pretty slasher staple, I suppose, isn't he?
Oh, of course, he's perfect. And, you know, that's the exact sort of character that they pick up on in Cabin in the Woods and stuff like that. You know, it's a staple of that camp slasher. You know, they're warned that they shouldn't go there.
Exactly.
But what's he doing there? Is he just perving?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
What is he doing? Is he snooping?
He's snooping at them through the window.
He's just having a little look. He knows what they get up to.
Yeah, he knows what's going on. And then pretty quickly after that, we get another random kill. Again, before the main carnage that happens at night ensues. Any ideas who the next kill is? I'll be really impressed if anyone remembers this, because I did not until I looked it up.
Is it the policeman?
It is the policeman.
Yes.
It is the policeman. He pulls over as he's driving through the woods because he sees a figure running. We catch a leg of Jason as he runs into the trees, and he's like, "Hey!" and he jumps out of his car and he follows him. And
finds the shack.
Yes, we get that first reveal of the shack,
But we get the nice bit where he sees something awful, but we don't see it.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, of course. He obviously sees his face. Yeah, that's right.
No, I assumed it was the shrine, the fucked up mum
the
head
head.
shrine.
Oh, yes, maybe it is.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right. The Norman Bates bit.
Yes, indeed. And then he gets a hammer to the back of the head.
That's right.
Savage.
Classic.
So that's 3.
So we're already up to 3 on our
Okay.
count. So just to reiterate, Becky, you need 5 more to win. Stevie, you need 7 more to win.
Shit.
Next up, this is where the carnage begins now. So the carnage in terms of all of the kids that die that night on Friday the 13th. This is a good one. Does anyone remember who the first of the kids is to get killed?
Yes, I do. It's the trap from the tree.
Yes.
Is it? I think his name's Scott.
It's Scott who gets hung upside down and then throat slashed with a machete.
Yeah, he's the worst. He deserves it.
Yes.
He was like the jockey character, right?
He's the one with the what's this called?
Catapult.
What's this called? Catapult.
The
Thank
catapult,
you.
yeah.
So brilliant. Somebody pointed out, because I posted that little clip on Instagram, somebody pointed out, she was like, I love how the stone that he catapults hits one butt cheek, but she grabs the other one.
Yeah.
So
She is a perfect example of put on an outfit in the morning, looked in the mirror, thought, too much material, and just cut like so much off. Like her t-shirt, her little Minnie Mouse t-shirt or Mickey Mouse t-shirt is just grazing under her boobs, and then like the tiniest hot pants.
So
yeah,
good.
she just got a little scissor happy.
Huge fan.
I love it. Are you guys fans of the film The Final Girls from a few years ago?
I love it.
Yes.
So good.
Love it.
And it's incredibly emotional as well. Every time I watch it, I cry.
I can't hear Betty Davis' eyes anymore without like shedding genuine tears.
It's so underrated. It's so underrated because it is really moving, but also it really like brilliantly spoofs basically Friday the 13th, right? I mean, all slashers, but really it's Friday the 13th. And you know, there is that one girl, there's that character who just keeps trying to take her clothes off and they have to like tape gloves to her.
And bind her up. Yeah.
She's literally that character, isn't she? What's her name? Who gets fired in the arse with the catapult.
Totally.
So there we go. Kill number 4. Scott hung upside down from the tree and has his throat slashed. Good little kill scene there.
Yeah.
Terry then is the girl who is it his girlfriend? I'm not really sure, but she goes off to get help. Comes back, finds that he's dead, screams, and then dies. But off screen, we never see what happens to her.
Oh right, that's why I don't have a mental image. Oh right,
yeah.
But she's dead.
She's definitely, because her body turns up at the end in the big kind of reveal of all the bodies. But yeah, again, we don't see her die, which again I still think is a weird decision for a Friday the 13th film to make. Like, what was the point in having her as a character if you're not actually going to show her die?
Because she was the one that got her tits and bum out.
Yeah, she had the best bum.
She was fulfilling a different role.
Yeah, fulfilling a different role. Yeah.
Fair enough.
It would be exploitative, Mike, if we were then to see her brutally murdered on screen.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. Let me ask you quickly as well, because we kind of I've skipped over it, but the campfire, there's the iconic campfire scene, right, where they're all sat around and he's like, I'm going to give it to you straight and tell you about Jason, and we get that whole little scene of exposition. It feels like that scene then gets used, doesn't it, like over and over again throughout the series as like, here's what you need to know.
Previously on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, it's pretty much the opening of every Friday the 13th. They show you that.
It's a very useful scene, and also it then has this is the jump scare that got me actually in the film. There's that jump scare at the end where the friend jumps out with the mask on. That one got me.
Ted.
It's good. Ted.
There you go.
Indeed. So Scott's dead. Terry's dead. Anyone remember who's the next to get it in part 2?
Is it? No, it's not the spear.
I'll give you a clue.
Is it the wheelchair?
It is the wheelchair.
Mark.
Mark. And this was, I believe, I can't remember what it was. There was some online poll. It might have been Fangoria or something, where they voted for their favourite kill in the Friday the 13th franchise, and this was number 1. This was voted that above the sleeping bags in whatever it was, part 7, which I would have thought would be number 1. This was voted.
The liquid nitrogen.
Yeah.
Yes, or Kevin Bacon as the most iconic as well. In a way. I mean, it's interesting that this one was
really. What does that say about people? I think it's devastating.
I mean,
maybe that's what it is. It's genuinely quite devastating and effective in a way.
Yeah.
Machete full through the skull as well. Like, I mean, you see that bad boy go in.
Yeah. It's quite mean-spirited, isn't it? Because it's a nice character in a wheelchair.
He's about
he gets
to get laid.
A brutal machete straight through the head, and then also the wheelchair gets pushed down the stairs.
Stairs.
Like, it just goes on, that kill, doesn't it? It doesn't just end abruptly like the others do.
Yeah, that's why I would never put it even in my top 5 of favourite kills, because it's
it makes
so
you sound like a
upsetting.
psychopath.
Well, yeah, really insensitive.
Maybe it's one of the scariest. Maybe that's what it was that people were voting for. I don't know. I'll find it and I'll send you the link. But there was definitely something. And also, I'm sure a lot of people like know about this, but a couple of the kills in this are directly referencing / have ripped off a really famous Mario Bava Giallo film called
Twitch
Bay
of the
Blood
Death
or Twitch of the Death. Yeah, Twitch of the Death Nerve is its American title. Yeah, where they have the exact same kills. Right, Stevie, have you heard about this?
I mean, it's 100%. Especially the skewer.
Yes,
as they call
the sex kebab. Yes.
Yeah, the sex kebab. Yeah, that. I mean, it's a complete rip-off of. It's the same shot.
Yeah, it is, and we have the same thing. There's a sort of jock character in Twitch of the Death Nerve who gets a machete straight in the face as well, and it is almost shot for shot the same. But whatever. That's I'm sure millions of teens going to see this in 1980 probably weren't aware of obscure Italian horrors from 10 years earlier. Sure.
I haven't seen Twitch of the Death Nerve, and yet I have seen a young jock in a wheelchair take a machete to the face. So
there you go.
Playing to the masses, isn't it?
I think that scene was so much more gruesome and grotesque, but they had to cut it. The skewer, what did you call it? The sex skewer?
The sex kebab. Yeah.
Sex kebab.
Yeah.
Yeah, originally, ridiculously. And apparently the actor who was playing... Becky, what's the name of the guy? Do you know the character? There you go, Jeff. The guy who's playing Jeff. They were there for so long, and he had a full prosthetic back that was made, and he had to be in that position for so many hours, because originally you'd see it go into his back and like work its way through. This is just a crazy, fun little... Hey, it's the 80s story. And so one of the sound guys, I think, came up to him and said, "Is everything all right?" He said, "I'm so uncomfortable, mate," although he didn't talk like that. And the guy went, "Okay, open your mouth." And he blew some quote unquote white powder into his mouth. And then he said he could have stayed there and done the scene for another 10 hours. So I think someone blew coke down his throat while he was doing it.
That's incredible.
It can't have been coke. He'd have become even more agitated and would have suddenly
sweated the prosthetic off.
Jumped up and put a fucking record on. I don't know about that.
There's a very similar story in part 4 about one of those kills as well, which I'll get to. I really enjoy. Have you guys seen that really long documentary, The Crystal Lake Memories?
Oh, several times. And I've got the coffee table book.
It's so good, Becky. You should watch it. It's phenomenal. It's about 6 hours long because they basically spend about half an hour on every single Friday the 13th.
Oh my god, amazing!
I would almost be tempted to say it's more fun to watch than the films themselves in a way, because it kind of takes you through all the kills and it's got all the actors talking about them. And
it's fantastic.
I don't want to know them as people, Mike. I just want to see them.
I know.
I just want to see them take machetes to the face.
Obviously, all of the actors behind the scenes are like super horny as well, I think, and they all actually stay in camps, like they stay in bunks while they're filming them and stuff. And Stevie, I don't know if you remember the story that apparently the guy in the wheelchair was like this really, really good looking. He was a model.
He is smoking hot.
He was the only
openly gay actor.
He was the only openly gay one, and every single girl on the cast wanted to shag him, and he had to have this conversation over and over again with all of them, where they kept coming onto him, and he's like, no,
wrong tree.
But I think you can imagine, can't you? It must just be like being an actual camp counselor, being an actor on one of these films.
Of course, it sounds like a tour. Like when I was younger, especially going on a theatre tour. I mean, that's exactly what it's like. You're all living in the same digs, but then going to this random theatre to do work each night, and then the rest of the time is yours, of course.
Yeah, it's what you do.
Lots of mixing.
So we had lots of mixing. So back to our body count. So wheelchair-bound Mark, poor Mark, was our 6th kill. 7th and 8th we've already talked about was Jeff and Sandra, the sex kebab.
Right.
So we're already up to 8. So Becky, if there are no more kills from this point onwards, then you've won.
Oh shit, I've fluffed it.
But alas,
yeah.
there are more. Does anyone remember who dies next?
I really can't. I feel like there's one point
We've done the memorable
where
ones
he's full on got a Michael Myers butcher knife, but I don't know if he kills someone with it. But he holds it upside down, which I think is really cool.
Yes.
Just to show he's like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, you basically, exactly, yeah. You've basically got it. There is that, it's a character called Vicky, according to my notes. Who,
that's the one who wanted to shag Mark.
Right, so she walks into the bedroom, discovers the sex kebab bodies, and Jason's still in there, and that's where we get that weird POV of the knife kind of coming towards her in the thunder and lightning while she's screaming. And she doesn't run, she just stands there screaming as he slowly comes at her with this upside down trowel.
Before we move too far away from it, I just want to quickly talk about the fact that Vicky wants to have sex with Mark. She gets him all hot by making him play like proto Game Boy with her, and then saying that she only wants him for his fingers. And
Oh yeah.
so that's all like hot. And then she's like, so do you want to stay with me tonight? And he's like, yeah, actually, I kind of think I do. And she's like, okay, great. Well, I'll be back in a minute. And she goes off. And what she's gone to get is like a rough knit pastel V-neck jumper and a pair of like ill-fitting brown knickers.
Yeah, the brown
What
knickers.
is happening?
And I'm sure the ones she takes off are sort of lacy
They're
black.
exactly. It's so weird. It's like, yeah, go on, Vicky. You go and get your hot stuff on so that you can really get Mark worked up. And she comes back in like a V-neck jumper and some brown knickers.
I did notice that. I so noticed that the ones she took off were really nice and lacy, and she put on just these sheer brown, iridescent, ill-fitted
And
trunks.
like it's so gross as well, because then she goes to the car and she has to like find her hairbrush, and the camera is just like full on her ass for like a minute and a half as she's sort of bent double into the car, like rooting around in the footwells or whatever. Again, like why this saggy pair of like polyester brown knickers? It's just such an odd choice.
Yeah, I really did notice that as well, and I'm glad you brought it up.
That is such a
It's
good
right,
point.
isn't
I love it. Yeah. Because again, they make such a point in the story of her going away to change. It's not like that's just what she's happened to be
No,
all
exactly.
day or anything. Such strange decisions. I mean, Steve Miner, the director, he went on and obviously did a whole bunch of films. He did a load of horror. He directed Halloween H2O as well. But
Lake Placid.
I'm not convinced. Oh, he did do.
Lake
Oh, okay. I'll take back what I was about to say then, because I was going to say I'm not convinced he's a great director. But he made Lake Placid, which is a masterpiece. So,
I think that's his best.
And Halloween H2O. I'm not having this, Mike.
That's
Come
what
on.
I was going to say. I don't think he's a great horror director. But anyway, so Vicky's dead. We're up to 9.
Wow.
And this is it, really. Now we're down to, I believe, just Ginny and Paul. Is it? I keep forgetting who that other guy's called. Ginny and Paul left. We have the big showdown, the big
showdown,
chase
right.
between Jason. We have Ginny using her powers of child psychology to best Jason. And does anyone know can make sense of what happens at the end here? Because
where does Paul go?
Yeah, what happens to Paul? What happens to Ginny? Because she kind of bests Jason. She stabs him in that shack. Then everything's kind of okay. Then they're in the camp together. They're in the huts or whatever. Then they hear somebody coming at the door. It turns out to be Muffin, the dog. And everything's fine.
Who we thought was dead, by the way. So
Yes.
thank
Muffin,
God for the reprieve for Muffin.
Muffin was
We also
not
thought
harmed.
Jason was dead, but hey ho.
Yeah. Then we have this moment, right? This classic Friday the 13th-esque jump scare where Jason bursts in. We see him without the mask for the first time. Bursts in through the window. Cuts to
brilliant
black. What did you
face.
think of that, Stevie? What did you think of that reveal of Jason's face and everything?
I love that. I think that's my favourite bit in the film, and I think it worked so well. That's why they completely copy it in number 4, don't they?
Yeah.
Where he bursts behind someone through a window again. So they're just like, let's keep that one because that's good. I love that because obviously he's not dead, and I love the final showdown as well. Another one of Stevie Webb's behind the scenes.
Good.
When they were filming that, he has the pickaxe, and I think she's got the machete, and he blocks the machete with the pickaxe as she's trying to chop him. And she actually got his finger, and he ended up needing 13 stitches. But when he went to the I know. Oh, hello. But when he went to the emergency room, he obviously had this massive machete sticking through his shoulder, which was the prop. And so obviously he turned up to the emergency room going, guys, I think I need stitches. And so
With a machete through the chest.
Everyone freaking out. But anyway, that last reveal I love. It's my favourite moment. It's great. Just what you want.
It's
to
really
round it all
good,
off.
isn't it? Another good, classic but good jump scare, right, Becky? That moment and that reveal of Jason and his face as he bursts in through the window.
That's one of the jump scares that gets me. Even though I know it's coming, but, I'm so excited that Muffin's alive and all my attention's on her. And then, it does. It gets me because it's so loud as well. Like, I love a window shatter. And through he comes, Jason's lovely face. Just want to Just,
I
love him. I love him.
But I don't really understand then what happens. Was that a dream? Was it real? Like, because then cut to the next morning, Ginny's still alive, but she's being carried off in a stretcher. Paul is nowhere to be seen, and that's it.
Ted is still out clubbing because we leave Ted at the bar, Ginger Ted.
Yeah.
We leave him at the bar. He asks that old guy, like, hey, is there an after party around here?
After hours.
And,
yeah, you're
and
right.
the old guy's like, yeah. And Ted's like, great. And I think he's planning to like ask the barmaid out or whatever. And you literally never see him again.
Oh my God, there's so much about this film that just completely passes me. I never even acknowledged that ginger kid just disappears.
Just never shows
midway
up
through the film. Yeah.
Because when there is the noise at the door or the knock, no, it can't be a knock because it's a dog. When there's the noise at the door, I'm fully thinking to myself, like, oh, well, it's
Ted.
not going to be Jason. It's going to be Ted. Like Ted, has rolled in drunk from his after party and this is him. And then it's like, no, it's not. It's Little Muffin. But yeah, you just never see him again.
That's it. And that's it. And that's where the film ends. So we had a final kill count, confirmed kills, 9. So you went 8 and 10, the two of you. So bang in the middle.
Tie.
Fair, I'll deal with that.
I mean, it would be 10 if we knew for definite that Paul was killed, but we don't. Paul's fate is unconfirmed at the end of the film, and we never hear.
Because she's saying, isn't she, as she's taken by the paramedic, she's like, where's Paul? And you just never know.
There you go. You never know. So that was Friday the 13th Part 2. Made a whole bunch of money, of course, in the same way that the first one did. So they pretty much went straight into production, into Part 3, didn't they? Now, we're not going to talk in depth about Part 3. Not a lot of people voted for Part 3. I think it's not a popular one in the franchise. But Stevie, you rewatched it, didn't you? Just briefly give us your thoughts about Part 3. Do you like it?
Yeah, I watched it this morning. Definitely. It's in my top 5. I really like it because this is where, obviously, they're cooking on gas now. So the deaths are more elaborate. And it was filmed filmed for 3D. So a lot of the deaths are centered around something popping towards the screen, whether it's an eyeball because Jason squeezes someone's head too hard, whether it's
phenomenal.
a harpoon coming towards an eye, red hot poker. So it's all that sort of stuff. So they were trying to be a bit clever and make it. Steve Miner again. Story-wise, you're not really. There's no arc, and this takes place, I think, the day after because it starts with everyone clearing up. Wait, is that right? No.
Yeah. No, I think it does, doesn't it? I think but it does. It makes very clear that it continues straight on because again, it does that thing where Part 3 starts with the final scene of Part 2. So it starts with Ginny putting on the sweater and pretending to be Mrs. Voorhees, and that's how Part 3 starts, isn't it? So
yeah, and the difference with this one is these kids don't know about Jason Voorhees, this new group of kids who are going to...
And they're not counsellors, they're not camp counsellors.
No, they're just going away for a weekend, these teenagers, and they haven't heard the legend of Jason, so it's not like the whole time they're wondering if Jason is out there. And the final girl, the girl called Chris, her storyline is a couple of years ago, a deformed man attacked her in the woods near here and got very strange with her and she escaped. So she wants to go back to the scene of the crime so she can be at peace with it.
So this is really weird, and I completely forgot this about Part 3 until rewatching this documentary, that there is this like weird storyline where the final girl, Chris, has like a sort of backstory where maybe she was sexually assaulted by Jason.
Yes.
Like a few years ago, like somewhere in the timeline between parts, before Part 1 happened. It's really weird. They kind of then just like forget that, but it's really strange.
Yeah, but so that's her reason for being there with her friends, so she can, be back at the scene of the crime and just sort of let it go and be at peace with it.
That went well.
But yeah, well, absolutely. But yeah, it's just a death-a-thon, and it's really good fun. And Jason seems much more formidable, and he's taking on much more of a threat. His threat level is much higher, and his strength seems to be much more.
I think, and by Part 3, obviously, it's like now we know it's Jason. Like I think they stop this whole whodunit mystery element that they tried to do in Parts 1 and 2, and it's like now it is very definitively Jason that this franchise is about, right? By Part 3. Like they make him look more Michael Myers-y, where he's just like in the background of shots. He's like out the window looking in, and he's just there all the time, sort of watching them. So they don't do that whole whose legs are we seeing type of shots anymore.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's straight away. You've got your man, and of course it's very important because this is where he first dons the hockey mask as well, which he just picks up in a barn.
Yeah,
it's one of the teenagers, and a lot of people. There's people on the crew. There's producers. There's writers. There's about 8 people claiming they came up with the hockey mask idea on the set. And so no one really knows where it came from, but a lot of people claim it was their idea.
I love it. Becky, have you seen part 3?
No.
Okay. Is it on your list? You're going to check it out at some point?
Yes. I think they're all on my list, really. I don't know why I haven't seen 3, because I've seen 1, 2, and 4. But
for some reason, it does have a bit of a bad rep.
Yeah,
but again,
I've heard maybe it wasn't.
I
worth
don't
it.
really understand that because, again, like you talked about, these films are exactly the same as each other. There is nothing that's worse about part 3 compared to part 2, in my opinion. Like, it's just the same, except he's wearing a hockey mask and there's more 3D effects. But that's it.
I mean, to be honest, now I absolutely love a film that was meant to be 3D.
And they're watching it in 2D. It's so funny. Such
joy. Like, just such a subtle joy that it brings. Now I know that.
Yeah.
In 2D, there's just so many ridiculous moments. Like he's using a yo-yo. And everything is just pointing towards you. There's a bit where someone's just literally hanging up the washing on the line with a washing pole and then just goes up to the camera with a washing pole and comes back.
It's so funny. And like you say, Stevie, there's a moment when somebody's playing with a yo-yo and it's going towards the camera and it's just held for like 5 minutes. And it's like, what? This is in 2D. This means nothing to us. Why are we watching this?
It goes on and on and on.
It's so good. So that was part 3. So like you mentioned, that takes place exactly after part 2, around Saturday the 14th, Sunday the 15th. Then we get straight to part 4, Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Becky, this time I'm going to leave it to you to give us a little plot synopsis.
Yes.
Fuck. Oh, God. All right. So we start off. Hold on. Where do we start off? We get the
Monday
recap
the
thing.
16th.
Monday the 16th of whatever month it is. We get the recap. So previously on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We start at the end of the previous film, at the end of 3. And so there's like ambulance crews and cops and a very sensible paramedic lady who it's her task to kind of strap him down onto the gurney. She's like, I'm not going anywhere near that, thanks very much. And his arm falls out and it's all like, maybe he might be alive. And then they get him to the hospital and there's a very horny orderly and a very sensible nurse who has a lapse in judgment and nearly sleeps with the horny orderly. But in the end, she's like, no, I'm not that stupid, zips up her dress. But they both get killed anyway by Jason. And then flash to mum and daughter jogging. And this is like the family at the centre. So you've got the Jarvises. Mum, don't know that we ever learn her name.
No, I don't think so.
But daughter Trish and son Tommy, who is played by the amazing
Corey Feldman.
Thank you. The amazing Corey Feldman. Very wee, tiny little guy, very nerdy haircut, little glasses. And they live next door to a kind of holiday home. And there are 6 teens turning up. They've like rented the place. So that, again, they're not counsellors. They're just like on a holiday. There are also a couple of twins who we don't really know.
So many people.
Like, we don't really know like where they live, but they wear a lot of pastel and they like to go cycling. They're also quite horny. And then there's also a hunter man who sort of turns up out of nowhere, pitches a tent.
So to speak.
So Trish has got the hots for him. He is quite handsome. And he says that he's there hunting bears, but actually he's there hunting Jason because one of the previous victims, and I couldn't catch which, was his sister.
It's Sandra from the Sex Kebab. Yeah,
Sandra Sex Kebab. Okay, yeah. I don't think that's how he refers to her, so I didn't quite know.
No.
Yes, so he's actually there hunting Jason, and Jason escapes the hospital and kills everybody.
Lovely.
But he can't best Tommy because he is a special effects maths whiz. And so because he's seen a photograph or like a bad sort of artist representation in the newspaper of Jason as a child, he's like, ha ha ha, no, I'm going to do the old like child psychology thing, and I'm not going to pretend to be your mum because that would be weird. I'm going to pretend to be little you. And so he shaves his head in record time.
Incredible.
And
with just a pair of tiny scissors
and like one of those like 80s one blade Bics. And then him and Trish best him. I think he again gets macheted.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Well, when you put it like that, it sounds a bit silly.
It sounds a bit far-fetched almost. So before we get into this, I'm going to take your kill count predictions.
Okay.
Part 4. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of characters. There are a lot of threads. Stevie, give us a number. What are you thinking?
I'm going high. What did I go for last time? 10, and it was 9. I'm going 12.
You're going 12. I love it. Becky, what about you? Furiously looking through your notes.
I know. It's not going to be any good. They're garbage. Okay, what did you say? 12? Fuck it. I'm going to say 13.
13 for Friday the 13th, the final
Friday
chapter.
13th.
And I will say this time, we will count Jason as one of them because technically in this film, he's dead at the end. So,
yep. This is Corey Feldman is actually technically the only person to actually defeat a living Jason who is not a zombie.
Corey.
Yeah. Good old Corey. Okay, so it begins straight away. Feels a little bit more big budget, don't you think, compared to the others? Like helicopters and police cars, and we're in this mortuary. Let me ask you, I haven't asked you actually both, just what you think of this film in general. Becky, how do you think this one compares to part 2?
Love it.
Yeah.
It's so fun. I like the introduction of the Jarvises. I think that gives another element. Having like an actual child in peril is an interesting sort of use of like the horror stuff rather than it just being the horny teens. I think having little Tommy and they give him quite a lot of character in quite a short amount of time because we don't spend a huge amount of time with him.
Yeah.
But all of the stuff about him being like, a monster geek and like him like wanting to show the guy his room and he's like got all of the sort of tentacles and stuff. Like it's so cool and it just works really well, I think, to set him up as like a proper little dude that we don't want to see killed. So it's less just the indiscriminate killing, I think, which is quite good. Maybe would have lost the revenge hunter brother, but yeah, on the whole, big fan.
Yeah. Stevie, what about you?
Basically exactly what Becky said. I just think it's really great and so much more fun. It's a much better structured film. There's vaguely interesting characters. When I was younger, it was all about less talking, more killing. And this one, it's a really good balance because you've got more of an arc. You've got I'd almost say depth in some of the characters. Yeah. You've got Crispin Glover's dancing.
dancing.
I mean, what not to love? And also, I remember specifically liking this one as a kid because I saw a lot of myself in Tommy Jarvis, who was this, the slightly weirdo outcast kid who loves monsters and masks and that sort of stuff. So I found it rewatching it yesterday. I think I found it so exciting to watch it again. It's great.
And Banana Hitchhike Girl.
We'll
so
get
good.
to Banana Hitchhike Girl. I love her. And I think it does look like I said, straight from the off, it feels like it's directed with a little bit more panache, this one, maybe, than the others. Like it kind of kicks straight off. It's a little bit more, like almost just a bit more cinematic, maybe, in some way, I think.
Yeah, a bit more Hollywood.
Yeah, it feels it. This was made by Joseph Zito, I think his name is, who had previously done The Prowler. I don't know if either of you guys have seen that early 80s slasher.
I have. That's some of my favourite Tom Savini work in that one.
Oh my God. So it is like nasty. That's similar to The Burning. It has some of the most kind of realistic and gory kind of kill scenes. The Prowler.
Gnarly,
there is a scene, really famous one, where a girl is stabbed to death with a sort of pitchfork in the shower, right? And it's even now it's quite hard to see how they pulled it off.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Just it's sort of below her chest, isn't it? Through the abdomen area.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So good.
This chat's been a nightmare. You keep adding to my watch list as if I don't have enough to already. What was the Jallo earlier? I've got to check out Twitch of.
The UK title is Bay of Blood.
I've seen that. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Fine. I've seen that.
Oh, I love it.
But the other name is Twitch of the Death
That's a
Nerve.
better name.
So you remember then the sex kebab and everything in Bay of Blood? No.
No, I was probably drunk.
Yeah, fair. And Stevie, you probably know about this, the behind the scenes stuff involved, the fact that I think Tommy Jarvis's character, speaking of Tom Savini, was kind of partly inspired by Tom Savini, right? And they were
Yeah, that's why he's called Tommy.
So cute.
Yeah, and they were sort of celebrating Tom Savini because really he is the man behind the success of Friday the 13th, isn't he? I would argue, like more than Sean
100%.
Cunningham. Like really, everyone remembers the amazing practical effects, and obviously he's back for this one. He wasn't here for 2 and 3, and he's back, and you can really tell the difference, can't you? I think when you look at the kills.
Yeah, it's an outstanding difference, and yeah, you're right. I mean, he created Jason because he created the boy that jumps out of the water at the end of the first one, and he comes back. It really is that sort of thing of like Wes Craven coming back for the Dream Warriors that you just feel the difference. And it was in the heyday of special effects guys. They were magicians. They were the stars during this era. So when you get Tom Savini back, it's a massive coup. And actually, originally, Greg Cannon was originally signed up to do it, who won an Oscar for his makeup work. But he left due to quote unquote personality differences. But I'm so glad he did, because then they called Tom up and he had an opening. And so, yeah, that just makes the film. And he always challenges himself as well, Tom Savini.
It's amazing, isn't he? And we've talked about him on the podcast before, but he obviously, quite famously, he started his career he had been a Vietnam War veteran, hadn't he? And I think he was a photographer out there, so he was actually taking pictures of, dead bodies, and he was seeing all of this really kind of gruey, nasty, horrible real life stuff, and basically learnt from the stuff that he saw and photographed how to recreate all of this macabre stuff. In his art, and he said it was a kind of almost therapy for him, kind of like recreating it in all of these different films. And he became really famous, I think, from Dawn of the Dead, George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and then kind of went from there and became like the 80s slasher man, didn't he? Really?
It's fair. I mean, I've actually got a wonderful coffee table book of his work.
Amazing.
That I mean, a lot of normal people might think that's a strange thing to have on a coffee table, because when you at any given page, it's just the most grotesque things. But it's fascinating, and that's why it just breaks my heart that so much of the practical effects is a dead culture now. But I mean, it's still out there. There's still some great stuff being done, but that is what was so exciting.
And it is interesting, like, that it's called the final chapter, because it does feel like, because it's not the final chapter, obviously, of Friday the 13th, but it does feel like it's the end of a little era, I think. Like, this was 1984, and it was just the end of that boom of slashers, wasn't it? That was so, they turned out hundreds of them. And, Tom Savini was so responsible for some of those, the best ones. And this was kind of, almost, it could look like a bit of a swan song for that early 80s era, because none of the rest of the Friday the 13th quite have that look and feel, do they, that these first four have? That kind of grainy, grimy, horrible sort of scuzziness that the first few have,
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, because I think you mentioned before, they get a bit glossy from here on out, pretty much. But this is scuzzy enough, but they've released a little bit of all those hundreds of millions or whatever it is they've made. They've put a little bit more into it, not too much, but it's gorgeous. Yeah, I think this is a top 3 for me for sure.
I love it. So Stevie went 12, Becky went 13. Let's rattle through some of these kills, and we'll talk about some of these characters as we go. So as you mentioned in your excellent synopsis, Becky, we start with our 2 mortuary people. Our 2, what are they called? Morgue attendants? I don't know.
Morticians.
Morticians, that's the word.
There you go.
Yeah, well, so Axel.
That's it.
He's perfectly set up as like the first kill of the film, because he's just
awful,
like obnoxious. She's into it. She's kind of reluctant, but into it to a certain extent until Jason like ruins the mood, basically. But he has that whole thing where he's like watching the kind of what is it, like aerobics videos and stuff, or she's trying to watch the news. I love that little sequence where she's watching the news report about the murders, and it talks about Jason being brought to their hospital, and she's like all excited that they've had like a shout out on the news report. I'm a big fan of that. I couldn't help thinking of Halloween 2 when Jason like lifts her off the ground, but obviously you don't get the amazing comedy moment with the shoes because that's been done by this point.
If only.
I know,
because this would have
right?
been the first, I think, Friday the 13th film to come out post Halloween 2. Maybe part 3 was, but I wonder whether that was in any way.
I mean, it was
influenced.
noticeably similar, except without the amazing like kind of finale of that shot. But yeah, no, I'm glad that Axel dies. I think it's a shame that
so unnecessarily as well, because he gets the sort of bone saw to the throat.
yes.
That'll do it.
So good.
But then he decides, no,
Like,
I'm going to twist
twists
his
his
head
head
all the way
off.
around.
Yeah.
as
Yeah,
well.
there's a lot more, isn't there, in this one? Kind of Jason being a bit more super strong, because we in the second one, right? He was very like scrawny and weedy, and this
and
like,
scrappy, and he
fumbly.
keeps falling
Scrappy.
over.
Exactly,
which I love.
exactly.
Yeah.
A bit more like, Ghostface in Scream almost, right? That kind of like clumsy. Whereas he's becoming more now like that killing machine, isn't he? By this one,
Yeah. But I think they're both really cool kills, actually. And also they leave it because the audience, all those kids, especially back then, they've gone to see what the kill's going to be like. And they leave it so long because he can't be dead. It's going to pop out at any moment. And they just prolong it, waiting for it. And they do it for a nice amount of time that they don't. I think it's the longest they leave it up to this point until there's a
true.
kill.
It's amazing with her kill as well, because like we've seen him offing people with the machete and an axe and like a hammer and all of that stuff, and when you see him go to stab her, like he's got this really small little kind of, it's almost like a surgical knife, I guess. And you sort of think like, oh, like, well, I did because I'm weird. Like, oh, like that's a shame. Like it's a tiny little knife, but then like he just like slits her like all the way down
That's
with
right,
it. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, it's okay. It's all right. Jason's a pro. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he'll give you what you need. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's not the size, it's what you do with it. There you go. So we get straight away, we're up to 2 kills. Then we come to the next day, Monday the 16th or Tuesday the 17th possibly now, and we are we're introduced to so many characters, right? So we've got, it's like there are these little sort of pockets of people. So like you guys have already talked about, we had the Jarvis family. So we've got Mum, Trish, Tommy. Then we meet our group of regular Friday the 13th fodder of kids, one of which is Crispin Glover. Again, not camp counselors anymore. They don't even bother trying to like link them to working at the camp. They're just kids that are traveling there so that they can fuck for the weekend. And then we have this guy who's like the hunter. Then we have the 2 twins that they run into as well. There are all of these different little threads and different bunches of characters. Let me ask you just in general, are you a fan of any particular characters, any faves out of this huge group of disposable teens that we're introduced to?
They really mix up in my head quite a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot. I mean, I separate it just as in Jarvis family, teens, twins, because the twins come out of nowhere. It's full on Shining. You don't know who they are. Do they live by? Why are they in those shell suits? Are they on the prowl to wait for teens and then have sex? That's just their MO. So that's it. And then Hunter, yeah, as you say. But I don't really differentiate them that much.
Becky, what do you think of Crispin Glover's character? And when we're introduced to him and his mate in the back of the car when they're like having that whole conversation about how he's a dead fuck.
Oh my God. Like, so is his name Jimmy? Like Jimbo or Jimmy?
Jimmy, and I think Ted. Is it another Ted?
Teddy. Yeah, it's Teddy.
Yeah.
I really like Crispin Glover's character. Like, I find him such an unusual actor.
He's
like,
so interesting,
his
isn't he?
Characters are always just like so. I mean, he almost steals this film. Like, he's just so odd, but like really kind of compelling and charismatic at the same time. Like that dance sequence, like what even is that? Like, who was that? A direction that he took? Was that like, I'd love to know. Stevie, you might even know, but he's amazing, and I love the whole kind of dead fuck thing. And he's just like, oh, I'm just so horny, and he's kind of broken up with his girlfriend, and all he wants is, because Teddy just keeps laying into him about how he's like a terrible lay.
Oh, Teddy is awful.
He's just the worst. He's the absolute worst. Incredible teeth, though.
Incredible teeth. There's about 15 minutes of this film where he is just sitting laughing at like 1920s porn on a projector.
It's
It
just
never
awful.
ends.
Bizarre, that
It's
bit.
really weird.
I kind of black out a bit and go a bit weird when all that's happening because it's really trippy and I'm not sure what's happening.
You know that like weird part of a night at a house party when there's just like a couple of people left watching TV and they're really stoned or really drunk,
Yeah.
and it actually feels like that part of the night when
It
you're
does.
watching that scene. It's like, what's happening?
100%.
And when the one of the twins leaves, like when she's kind of sat there and she realizes like this is it, like the party's done, it's not getting any better than this, like I've got my third choice guy and my sister's getting laid upstairs and I'm just kind of bored, and she decides to leave. I'm like, mate, I get it, like we've all been there when you just suddenly have that almost out of body experience
It's time
when
to
you're
leave.
like, it's time to go home.
Yeah. Get me an Uber immediately. Yeah, it is. It really gets that right in this, doesn't it? It's like, oof, this party's
And
gone.
also with that, when they're having all that conversation about being a dead fuck and all that, apparently a lot of that's all improvised. But also, it's really resonant that suddenly I was questioning that watching it. I was like, hang on, is there much swearing in the first three? And I don't think there is. There's not really fuck and stuff like that. And whereas these teens straight away they're saying it all the time.
Ginny says something to Paul right at the end where she's like, Paul, there's someone fucking in here or something, when she's trying to tell him that Jason's there. But no, you're right. Like, I think this one definitely pushes that stuff. And I think the nudity as well, like there is obviously there's nudity and sex in the first three, but I thought noticeably with this one there was more male nudity rather than just like girls' bums and tits.
Yeah, I remember Stevie, I don't know if you remember on the documentary, the twins say that, right? Because I think the twins had to talk about how they had to get naked or at least get topless for the lake scene. And they were like, we actually felt quite comfortable because straight away the boys just like stripped completely naked and we just like...
Yeah, for the skinny dipping and all.
So yeah, it's true. I think there was a little bit more equal footing with nakedness in this particular Friday the 13th. I wonder whether the censorship had relaxed or something, because like with the gore and the nudity in this one, it did seem like there was a lot more.
Yeah, and how many times you're allowed to say fuck before it turns into another. Yeah, so I definitely think it was. Times had changed.
So we have this is a bit of a staple in Friday the 13th. Before we get to the night itself and all of the big killings happen, there is a sort of second kill scene, a sort of daylight kill that happens, a little bit separate from the main group. Any ideas? Becky, your face is lit up. Any ideas who's next?
Canada in Love.
Yeah, it's got to be Banana Girl.
It's Banana Girl.
My spirit animal.
So good. What a random scene. What a random character. I love it.
So good. The way she like squeezes the banana as she's getting
The
killed.
flaccid.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. So it's just a hippie hitchhiker, and they know we're, a good few minutes has gone by. We're in need of a kill, so they pop one in, and it's very reminiscent of Kevin Bacon's one. From behind, coming through the throat. Yes. And it's just great.
Yeah.
So great.
And as you say, getting one of those daytime kills in, it really sets up it just sets up the danger straight away, that it's not like, oh gosh, it's going to kick off when it gets to nighttime. He's already on the prowl.
It's great. And they know how to pace Friday the 13th movies, because I think otherwise you would be waiting too long if you had to wait till nightfall and you were just watching character stuff for the first 45 minutes. Like, they always have to insert that Crazy Ralph or Hitchhiker sort of kill scene somewhere there in that first act, don't they?
There's that kind of like little sense of kind of sadness about it as well, because like if they just picked her up, there was room in that car. They said there wasn't, but I think it was just because like she wasn't like slim and had her tits out. I think it's outrageous.
Yeah, probably.
It's true. Yeah, I agree. You actually, but for how little screen time you get, quite like her and feel quite sad that she dies, right? Yeah.
She's a legend.
And you're right, there are, like, the way she dies is a bit reminiscent. I wondered if there was any deliberate callbacks to the first one in this one, maybe, as well, being the final chapter and being Tom Savini again. There was a lot of, I don't know if you noticed, like, I was thinking about it watching it last night, there's a lot of Friday the 13th movies where Jason kills people through various surfaces, like through a bunk bed or through a dinghy or on the other side of a wall. It's always like
projector screen.
Yes,
exactly. There's always something where it's like penetrating through some sort of wall or I almost want to use the term glory hole-esque
Yeah.
kills in a way, because it's like, where's that?
Or
kind
it's
of
like
thing?
Omar Epps in Scream 2. That
Yeah,
is awesome,
exactly.
against the stall door.
Exactly. So poor Hitchhiker is the third person to get it. Then we get to our main sort of group of kills with all of these kids. Can anyone remember who the first teenager is to get offed?
This is going to be such a struggle for me because they really blur.
And there's so fucking many of them.
Is it
that.
Sam in the dinghy?
It is Sam in the. I'm so impressed that A, you got it right, and that B, you got the name of the character.
Look, they're not just slabs of meat to me, Mike, even though I've said previously that they are, and
They
I just
are.
want them all to die. I'm contradicting myself now.
Another horrible story for you about that scene. So
How long was she in the
girl-
dinghy? 25 hours.
It's honestly, it's literally that.
Oh my God.
Because she was actually stood upright in the water, and then they had a false body in the dinghy. So she was submerged from her neck down in water, in freezing cold, and they filmed in winter for hours. And obviously she couldn't get out because the prosthetic would have to be taken off the back of her neck. And basically she ended up, she was crying about it and shivering so much. And I think it was the guy who played Jason, I can't remember his name in this particular one, that went up to the director and said, either you get her out of there now and warm her up, or I'm leaving. And it turns out she was diagnosed with hypothermia.
My God.
And had to go off work for a few days.
That is horrific.
Isn't it? I think this one specifically, all of the kids had a horrible time because it was filmed in midwinter and the second half of the entire film is rain.
Yeah.
So rain machines. So
Yeah, it was. It was the actor Richard Brooker who played Jason, who I thought was
There you
quite
go.
interesting when he was interviewed. He was he's quite a lot older. I think he was the oldest actor to play Jason. And so he was much more sort of middle-aged compared to all his kids. And he deliberately just kind of kept himself away from them all, didn't he? I think he said that like it was partly as a character thing so that Jason was a bit more distant and mysterious. But I think also you could tell he was like, I don't want to be anywhere near these people throughout this shoot. Like he's just like,
Absolutely.
it was just this old dude who just kept to himself, basically, wasn't he? But yeah, stood
I
up
love
for
that
this poor girl.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. It's pretty nasty stuff.
That is brutal.
but it's such a good kill. And then it got cut to shreds because of the ratings board. But you can see that one. That's not lost forever. You can see the extended version of that, and it's
There you
gross.
go. And then pretty soon after that, there's another kill. Does anyone remember what comes next?
That's her boyfriend. He gets skewered in the dick, basically, pulled up out of the water.
Again, like they're just nastier, aren't they? These kills.
Yes.
Yeah, but he fucking deserves it because he's been off with the twin. He's like he's
twin.
gone there with his girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
And right in front of her, he's like getting off with that other girl, like coming on to
that's so
her.
true.
So
There you
I'm
go.
sorry, but
Stabbed in the dick. Got what he deserved.
yeah, spear through the dick is the least he deserved, if you ask me.
It's almost poetic.
Then we get to like it's the main sort of party, isn't it? Where all these kids are all sleeping with each other or sort of trying to sleep with each other,
Getting stoned.
The 1920s vintage porn is on the projector. I mean, what's that
So
about?
weird.
What, they don't even explain that, do they? It's just there. It's just on suddenly.
He finds a reel, like a projector, like an old reel of this black and white silent movie topless dancing, but all the women are sort of dressed as comedic sort of characters, like a yodeler and sort of bizarre things like that, or a Viking, and then they've got their tits out. I don't know. It's honestly one of the most trippy 15 minutes of film I've ever seen, because I don't know what is going
what's
on.
happening?
It's almost like a George Méliès kind of situation
Yes.
where he's just like, he's literally just sitting there, like laughing to himself, laughing at it. There's this sort of weird sort of like melancholy about it, because obviously he's been rejected by everybody else at the party. And it's like, it's slightly hysterical. And it's so odd.
Totally. And the actor himself, I don't know if you remember this, Stevie, he talked about how he actually got stoned for it because he'd never, I think he'd never got stoned before, and he decided that it would be fun to do it because he had to for the scene.
Method.
Do you know what? I can actually totally believe that, because his like it is the way that he just won't stop laughing. Like,
yes. But then,
yeah.
apparently, he then, when it came to, we'll get to his kill scene, but when it came to filming his kill scene, he got super, super paranoia and like really had a proper freak out as well when it came to the moment when he had to be killed, which is amazing.
Bless him.
But he's not the next kill. Does anyone remember who the next kill is?
What? Oh shit! Okay, hang on.
fact,
Who
there's
have we just
fucking
done?
loads, yeah.
Oh, so the two in the water with boat.
Yes, so
and
we
Dick
had
Stewart.
Sam and Paul were kills 4 and 5
So
in
it's
the lake.
either going to be Sarah the Virgin. It's got to be Sarah the Virgin's shower guy.
It's not.
Who's
It's not. No, we don't get to
It's
those for a
not.
while yet.
I don't know. Then.
Is it one of the main? Is it one of the group of kids?
It is.
Tell us that.
Oh,
Really?
it's the twin who.
It's the twin.
It's the twin who leaves.
Yeah.
I don't remember how
She
she
gets
dies.
chucked out a window onto a car.
No, that's second twin.
Oh,
That's
hang on.
second
Else.
twin.
is it?
First twin drops out of the party, and then you get a cool like shadow kill. So you see it in like silhouette, where I think she
Yes,
gets
a lightning flash.
Yeah, so she gets
In a lightning
stabbed.
flash.
I think it's probably macheted, and then as the thunder rolls, she gets like thrown into the side of the house.
Yes,
I love it.
Yes, I remember now. I loved that actually. That flash of lightning, and you see him skew
It's
like
cool.
stick through
Yeah,
his
the
stomach. It's
silhouette
really
kill
good.
is very cool.
Yeah.
There's been some bad weather throughout this whole weekend, don't you think? Like,
So rough.
of all the weekends for all of these hundreds of kids to decide to
go
come
camping.
to the lake, it's been a nightmare
Right.
for them all. So this is the next one is a bit of a weird one because there is a character who sort of dies. We know she dies, but she dies off screen. We don't see her die. Anyone know who the next one is?
Oh, fucking
Yeah.
hell. There's so many.
Mum?
There's just no time to get to know anyone
The
in
mum.
this.
It is Mrs.
Oh, is
Mrs.
it?
Jarvis.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Maybe they thought that was too cruel to show Tommy's
Yeah,
mum get
yeah, you
violently
can't-
murdered.
yeah.
She is the seventh
Horny
kill, though.
teens is fine. Mums and kids is a no-no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think actually, yeah, there was an alternate ending where Trish finds her.
Ooh.
But finds her mum in the bath
Yes.
upstairs or something. That's ringing a bell, but I think they cut it. But yeah, of course, she just goes missing, I guess, but she must be dead.
Yeah, and I think her body does get uncovered at some point, or they suggest that she's found her body or something later on, so we know she dies.
Right.
So she gets killed, but she just gasps. She sees Jason and gasps, and then it cuts away, basically. So that's the 7th. We're already up to 7. We've still got a lot more to go.
Oh, God.
The next one is one of the best characters and one of the best kills. Can anyone remember who's next?
Oh. Wait, is it Crispin Glover with the
Yes,
corkscrew?
it is Crispin.
So good.
How good is this one? Love
Yes.
it.
Well, the corkscrew through his hand to keep him in place, and then is it machete to the neck?
Yeah,
or...
machete through. I think it's through the head. Is it? Is it a machete through the head?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Classic, standard.
Big fan. He's just had his end away with, I think it's Tina, the twin.
He gets a bit
And
emotional afterwards. He gets a bit down
bit
in the dumps.
emotional.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, he gets a bit emotional, has to just check that it was all okay. She fucking loved it and wants round 2. But because he's a young man and his ego is very much front of picture, he's like, while she's having her in between sexy times I'm just going to pop downstairs and gloat to Teddy about the fact that I've just had sex and she said I was amazing. So he has to go and gloat, and that is his undoing, because he's like, let's open a bottle of wine to celebrate, and then he's looking for the corkscrew. Where is it, guys? Where is it? It's in his hand. That's where it is.
That's where it is.
I know. There it is. Punishment
fab.
again. You know.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it when Jason tools up with something unconventional.
So great. It's so good. And it's so true, isn't it? As soon as if he hadn't done that, if he hadn't
hadn't gloated, he could have had a lovely second go.
It's
with
so
Tina,
funny
the lovely twin.
how overtly these films are like morality tales, aren't they? Just like always punish the horrible kids, basically, no matter what. So that was number 8. Can anyone remember number 9?
I don't know who it is, but I'm pretty sure I remember the death because something confused me. Maybe it is one of the twins that gets thrown out of a window.
That's next.
and then lands on a car that then explodes.
Yes, it explodes. Yes.
Yes, they talked about this in the documentary, so they just thought it would look even cooler if she landed on the car and then they just blew all the windows open, basically, at that same time. Why not?
It's amazing. Like, how heavy is this girl? Like,
Brilliant. Is that 10?
that is 9. And then 10 is Teddy. So then we finally get... So by the time Teddy gets it, most of the friends are gone by this point. Or quite a lot of them are gone. So he's sat there alone. I do think this is quite a cool scene when he sort of gets up, walks over to the projector, can't really see past the flickering light, and then the knife comes through the screen right behind him. Is that right? But I quite like that. And I wonder if almost they just thought, it would be cool to have something involving a projector, and that's why they introduced that whole vintage porn thing beforehand.
Of course. Yeah, I think it's literally just a device for the kill.
Yeah, exactly. A flickering strobing light is always good for that kind of thing. So we're up to... That's number 10. That's number 10, and there's still a few more.
Well, I don't know if it's yet or a bit later, but I want to talk about Gordon the dog.
Oh,
yes, please.
Yeah.
So now Gordon the dog, who's I think either a golden retriever or...
I think he's a retriever.
Something like that, you know. Yeah, a retriever. Now then, he... at one point, he's exploring the house, and we believe he comes across some of the dead bodies. And so we see a shot of him jumping through a glass window to the outside.
Yes.
And now I remember doing research on this, and there are theories that out of fright, the dog decided, oh shit, there's dead bodies, and leapt itself through a window to get away, and then it runs away. And then there's other people that say Jason threw the dog out the window, but Jason's not known for hurting animals, and I don't think that's him, because Jason is next immediately in the basement, I think. So I think the dog,
oh my god,
Gordon, jumps through a window on his own in sheer
like
panic.
one of those like YouTube videos where people put cucumbers behind cats and then they sort of leap.
Yes. And they leap.
So I've just had a look at my notes about this because I noticed this as well. So basically, while all the carnage is going on in the teen holiday home, you've got Trish and the Hunter man are like putting the pieces together, and then they're like, shit, Jason is out here killing people and Tommy's home alone. So they immediately like panic run back to the Jarvis's house to find Tommy there alone. And they're like, oh, Tommy, thank God. Oh, we were so worried. And then immediately leave again.
Leave him again?
Completely on his own this time, because they even take the dog. And they're just like, you hold the fort. Hey, buddy. And it's like, what? Like, literally just leave him
100%.
completely on his own now. Son's dog as well. And then my note just says, then Gordon does a death jump out the window, ?
I love it.
No idea why.
I'm quite pleased about that, because I always just assumed it was Jason, and I always felt like it was a bit out of character for Jason to do that.
Jason wouldn't do that.
No,
Jason
it's
wouldn't do
Gordon
that,
just jumping for his life.
That makes a lot more
get away.
sense. That makes a lot more sense.
So we're not counting him as a kill?
No, we're not going to count.
Okay.
No, I haven't counted him as a kill. No.
Who is next then?
Becky mentioned one earlier, and I said, oh, it's not for ages yet. And this is the next one.
It's the Kurt. It must be the shower, right?
It's the shower. It's the skull. It's Doug's skull getting crushed. That is great, isn't it?
Crush.
Oh, with one hand, like he breaks his nose and then pushes his hand through his face. It's that, isn't it?
That's how I dream of killing people.
I know, there's something quite
so
satisfying
good.
about it, isn't there?
Crushing a skull with your bare hands.
That's proper Tom Savini shit.
But apparently Tom Savini said in the doc, like, he said to the actor who played Jason, he was like, just go, this is the only model head we've got, so just like go easy on it. And the director was like, fucking go for it, smash it. And so like told the actor who played Jason just to crush it as much as he could, because he was like, we'll get it in one take, it's fine.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. So that was kill number 11. Number 12. Ooh. Who's left?
12 must be Sarah the Virgin.
Sarah the Virgin.
Takes an axe to the heart.
Correct. Yeah,
Why do I remember this?
Discovers Doug's body in the shower, and then gets an axe straight in the torso.
Okay.
I've put in brackets in a towel. I don't know why I decided to point that out to myself, but she's in a towel.
I just think it was quite poetic of Jason. Like, she's literally just fallen in love with this guy after losing her virginity, and then takes an axe to the heart. I just thought that was quite beautiful.
Oh, I know. He's a soppy guy, really.
He is,
Jason,
yeah.
isn't he? And this is it. We're nearly there. I mean, I think that is all of the teen group dead, every single one of them, right? Including the Virgin. Even the Virgin has been offed. So all that's left.
Well, that's because she had sex.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No longer a virgin, I suppose. So,
Oh my gosh, so it's Jason. So Becky's right. It's 13.
well,
Is that right?
no.
Wait.
There's another. So
Before we move too far away from it,
yeah, go on.
can we talk about him blocking the exits with dead bodies? Because this is one of the most fucked up, gnarly things I've ever seen, and I love it.
So good.
She literally, he literally crucifies. Well, I mean, it's not literally because it's not on a cross, but he basically nails Crispin Glover across the door, with his
screen door.
It's unbelievable. And she's trying to. Can you imagine being that person trying to get out of the house, and every exit you go to, there's a different one of your dead friends just blocking your exit. That is
good.
That you didn't hear getting nailed on.
Again,
yes, exactly.
It's so
and
good.
then when Jason then leaves the house, he literally tears Crispin Glover's body down like a fucking shower curtain. Just
Yeah, through his hand. It's gross. Yeah, I forgot about
It's
that.
those little details that they didn't have to put that in, but they did. So good. Yeah, it's it's that scene, isn't it, in Halloween where Laurie suddenly discovers all the bodies popping out of cupboards, but just cranked up on steroids, isn't it? It's so good.
Yeah, it's wicked. So there's
we have
another
another death. It's a bit of a lame one. So who's left now?
Is it the hunter?
It's the hunter. It's Rob. And I don't know if you guys remember, this is just where he gets attacked in the basement, and we don't really see what happens. It's dark, and he just yells, "He's killing me! He's killing me!" And we don't actually really see it. We
Run out of budget.
We see some limbs flailing in the dark, and Jason go like this, and then we see Trish's kind of as we just hear him going, "He's killing me!" And that's it. So
okay.
I'll take that to mean he's dead.
No one really cared about Rob anyway. He was a very extraneous addition to the mix.
Exactly.
And a very tenuous connection.
Very tenuous.
While all of this is going on, this final sort of showdown, obviously, as you've mentioned, Corey is cutting his hair furiously. He's come up with a plan. I love this whole thing as well at the beginning when they set up Tommy as this hilariously realistic little kid who discovers that there are teens living opposite him across the lake, sort of stripping naked, and he just doesn't know what the fuck to do with himself. That's quite funny.
That whole sequence where he's in bed watching them getting it on through the window and how excited he is amazing.
Yeah. I think there was somebody on the documentary that was like, Tommy is us. He's us. He's getting excited by looking in on these teens and what's happening to them. It's fair enough.
Yeah, I'm sure it's that deep.
Yeah,
sure.
I know. The thought that goes into this. And that's it. And then we have this final big showdown where Tommy turns up with his bald head, dressed as, like you said, Becky, sort of dressed as baby Jason. What do you think of this as this sort of final showdown and the way in which Jason is sort of bested? Does it work for you as the final scene of the final chapter, Stevie?
Yeah, I mean, it's been done because they're kind of copying the getting into one way to slow him down or stop Jason and distract him is to get into his psyche, by pretending to be his mum or pretending to be him. So it's very intuitive of him to do that just from, as Becky said, looking at an artist's impression of him when he was young and getting it pretty right, even the dark circles around the eyes. But it's just such a fun showdown. It's great, especially because it's a kid.
Yeah.
It's a little eccentric kid and he saves the day. So he's the little outcast in everyone who gets to save the day. And that hobby, that thing that you love that people think is weird and you should, and people just don't understand that why you're into things like makeup and things like that as a young little boy. But then that is what saves him, because he has the tools and the experience in all his practices to create something to defeat the bad guy. And so the outcast wins, and I love it. I think it's perfect. And then I love, but the very end sting when Tommy's being carried away and everything's all right, and then he gives an evil look to the camera, and we're meant to think, has the evil now, does it subside in him?
Yes.
Is it residing in him?
He's just got a taste for it now, mate. You get that point where he's like, okay,
bloodlust.
Yeah, he's got the bloodlust.
Do you remember Halloween. Has anyone seen Halloween 4 with little Danielle Harris?
Yes.
And that's what happens to her. At
Danielle
the end
Harris,
that
of
film
course.
as well, doesn't it? It's like she bests Michael and then she turns evil. And then a bit
Yeah.
like this, they kind of ignore it in the next one and fuck it up. But yeah, it's
Yeah, doesn't she even don the little
mask and the
clown outfit? And
exactly. It's quite cool. And I heard them talk about all the different ways in which Jason could finally be killed. And they said, maybe we could burn him, or maybe we could behead him, or that somebody came up with like Tommy could have invented like little gadgets, and they like microwave him so that he explodes from the inside. And then they were like, oh, all of that was too elaborate. And they said, the point of Jason is that he kills people with these like basic tools, like trowels and axes and stuff. And they thought it would be more satisfying to just see Tommy just fucking go to town
Just
with
like
him on a
literally
machete.
fucking beat him to death.
Yeah.
Screaming, die, 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 die.
Yeah. Did you like that, Becky? Did that work for you?
Yeah.
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 And I have to say also, I'm sure both of you love the when he's been chopped in the head with the machete, Jason, and he slides down on the blade.
So good. So good.
I love it.
So good. And there's the bit earlier where Trish gets him in the hand with the machete as well, like goes like all the way down, like almost to his wrist. That is grim. Also,
And he's got weird purple monster hands.
yes, he does. Terrible manicure. Awful. And you get to see his little fucked up face again.
I
so
know.
love it.
Yes, his little face. So there you go. And that Jason was kill number 14. So Stevie went 12, Becky went 13, and it was 14.
Oh!
15 if you include the dog. So so there you go. It's tough. It's tough to. I mean, so many characters.
I think we're pretty evenly matched, Stevie.
pretty evenly matched there. What a banger of a film, right? Final chapter.
I love it.
Good.
I do love
so
it.
good. Becky, have you seen part 5? Because I know you've seen like various ones, right? Sort of scattered throughout.
Which one's part 5?
Imposter.
5 is it's the imposter. It's the one where they try and start a new thread with Tommy Jarvis, but without Jason.
No.
There's no
Okay,
Jason.
no, I
in it,
haven't seen that one. But I have seen the one where Tommy Jarvis and his mate go to the graveyard and they make him come back to life with lightning.
Jason lives.
Incredible.
I love that one.
Then you get zombie unstoppable Jason.
Love that one. Big fan. And I've seen Manhattan and I've seen Jason X.
Okay, so you've seen all the even numbered ones, but not the odd ones. So you've not seen 3, 5, 7, and 9.
I don't know.
Oh my God, 7, Becky. I think you'd love it. It's Carrie versus Jason.
Oh, fuck.
It's a girl with telekinesis.
Yeah, no, I have seen that one.
Oh, you have? Okay.
I've seen that one. Yeah, no,
well,
I
that
have.
ruined my fun little formula there.
You can't give them numbers. Friday the 13th 7 means nothing to me. Carrie versus Jason means something to me, okay?
Yeah. Fair enough. Nice. So, Stevie, where does this one rank for you? Is this kind of higher up than... I mean, I know you said you like it more than 2.
It's in top 3.
Top 3.
This is in top 3 for sure. But then I've got this because it's a well-formed film, but then I've also got Jason Manhattan because it's so ridiculous. So my top 3 is a real jumble of films.
Yeah,
but it's in there.
It's so
Where
much
they land, I'm not sure, but I'm going to pop it in the middle and say possibly it might be my second favourite.
Oh, nice. Becky, what about you? How does out of the ones you've seen, where does this one rank for you? Is it one of your faves?
It is. It's definitely one of my faves. I would probably go, again, not in an order, but I think my top 3 would be 1, this, and Manhattan.
Yeah.
Out of the ones I've seen.
That's a good list.
It's a good list.
What about you?
Yeah, it's 1, this, and 6 for me would be my top 3.
Which one's 6?
Jason Lives.
Is the when
that's
he gets
Jason
struck
Lives.
by
Oh,
lightning
yeah,
and
it
comes
is
back
good.
to life.
It is
yeah,
good.
Yeah. So there you go.
Amazing.
We did it.
Yay.
We've got to do more. I mean, I was just looking at the calendar. So the next time it's Friday the 13th is August 2021.
Oh.
So we'll do other stuff before then. But
Well, can we do Valentine
yes. Oh my
in
god.
February?
Oh,
Can't
please.
we?
Do you know what we should do? We should do an 80s slasher and a 90s one. So we should do My Bloody Valentine at early 80s, and then we should do Valentine as like shit 90s, and then we can like talk about them both back to back.
Love it.
Yes. Okay.
We should definitely do that.
Awesome.
We should definitely do that.
It's on.
We'll try and nail all of the kind of season specific. Oh,
Christmas.
April Fools.
Yeah.
April. I love April Fools.
Silent Night, Deadly Night. Oh,
Mother's
my
Day,
God.
graduation day.
Oh my god. I'm so excited.
Guys, thank you so much. Stevie, let's not leave it this long again, please, Stevie. Come back soon.
Yeah, no, definitely not. You know where I am. Literally can't go anywhere.
And let everyone know where they can find you out there on the internet world.
Mr. Stevie Webb on most platforms, including Grindr. No, I'm joking.
He's not joking.
No, I am.
No. Becky, what about you?
Bunny Dark on Twitter and Instagram.
Amazing. Guys, thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks, mate.
And there we go. That's it for our Friday the 13th special. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to that. And I hope that you will be enjoying a couple of classic Friday the 13th movies tonight to celebrate this momentous date in the calendar. Thank you so much to Stevie Webb and Becky Dark. If you like that conversation, if you like that combination of me, Stevie and Becky talking about 80s slasher films, oh my God, there are so many more where that came from on Patreon. Stevie, Becky and I have covered everything from Blood Rage to My Bloody Valentine to Sleepaway Camp to I Still Know What You Did Last Summer and many, many others. So please do head on over to patreon.com/evolution of horror and check out our Dream Warriors collection. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back next week. Normal service will resume and our Home Invasion series will continue. So join us next week for all of that and more on the Evolution of Horror.